Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you just how easy it is to install a Lectron carburetor. I'm going to be using my YZ125X here as an example. It will vary slightly depending on which bike you have, but the general concept applies across the board. I'm confident that anyone is capable of doing this install on their own. You do not have to be very mechanically inclined. As long as you can use a wrench and screw and unscrew bolts, you'll be just fine. So follow these simple steps and you'll be ready to rip. Start things out by removing the seat. Next, we'll unhook the fuel line and begin to unbolt the gas tank. Once you've removed the gas tank, we can go up to the throttle housing and begin to unhook the stock throttle cable. Simply remove the top cover, take this little wheel out. You can loosen that for the time being, or go straight to this, unhooking the throttle cable from the throttle cam. Now unthread the adjuster all the way out and remove the throttle cable. Remove any other hardware holding the cable in place and pull it through. Loosen both hose clamps holding the carburetor in place. Now that the clamps are loose, you can start to remove the air boot. I like to tuck it behind the frame here on the YZs. Not every bike model will allow you to do this. In fact, some you may have to undo the lower subframe bolts and pivot the whole subframe up. Just make sure the air boot's out of the way so you're not fighting it. After that, it's as simple as pulling the carburetor out. For 125s or any other size bike, go to my website and check out these products. Everything is kept in stock and ships fast. Give your bike the performance it deserves. Link in description of this video. Take the new Lectron carburetor out of the packaging and remove the top cover. Once you have the top cover removed, carefully dump out the slide into your hand. You really don't want to drop this or get it dirty. I found that rotating the hose clamp on the intake out of the way gives you a little more clearance and makes it a lot easier to install the carb, especially on bikes where the clearance is a little tight. Take your time fitting the carb into the frame. Clearance is minimal on some models, but you should never try to force it. Be patient and try different approaches if it's not going in easily. Once you have it seated in the frame, gently wiggle it into the intake and you can rotate that clamp back around where you can access it. Now take the air boot and install it onto the bell of the Lectron. Be sure that it's seated evenly all the way around. Next, take the throttle cable provided with the kit and thread it through the throttle housing and dust cover. For now, thread the cable about halfway or a little more into the housing. We'll go over adjusting this later on in the video. Using the provided cable lube, cover the end of the cable. Install the end of the cable into the throttle cam and remove any excess slack so it fits neatly within the wheel. Now you can reinstall the cover and dust boot. Carefully feed the new cable through the same path that the stock cable followed and reinstall any hardware. Now grab the carburetor top cover and thread it all the way onto the other end of the cable. Grab some more lube and lube that end of the cable. Now you can install your slide and spring. I recommend compressing the spring all the way and then dropping the end of the cable through the slide and letting the spring decompress. Since you left the hose clamps loose, rotate the carb outwards so it's more easily accessible. Be sure that the flat part of the metering rod is facing the engine when you install it. Also be sure to check that the top cover gasket is present. Reinstall all 3 top cover screws and gently tighten them down. Rotate the carburetor back to the upright position and tighten the hose clamps. Use a few zip ties to retain the new throttle cable close to the frame, but leave a little wiggle room. You don't want to over tighten them. Now tidy up the vent lines through the swing arm. This is a very important step. Head back up to the throttle housing and we need to check the free play. So as you can see right now, there's a lot of free play. This means that the wire is a little too loose in the casing, so essentially we want to lengthen the throttle cable casing. To do this, we simply unscrew the adjuster up here, and that will remove some of the free play. As you can see, it made a little bit of a difference there. One thing we want to avoid is unscrewing this adjuster so much that there aren't many threads going into the housing, so we're going to leave it screwed in around halfway just to make sure it's got some solid bite into the housing. Once you have this adjustment set, you can go ahead and tighten the pinch nut up against the housing. This will lock the adjustment in place. As you can see though, we still have a little bit too much free play, so we're going to go ahead to the center adjuster and make some changes there. Same concept here, we want to lengthen the casing, so we're going to unscrew this adjuster here and recheck the free play. So I actually made a little too big of an adjustment there, which caused the throttle to be a little too tight on free play. So I'm going to screw that back in and then tighten this pinch nut, and now it feels good. If you have too much free play, the cable could bind up inside the throttle housing. If you don't have enough, the slide could hang up inside the carb, which would cause a high idle that you wouldn't be able to adjust with the idle screw. Lastly, tighten the adjuster that threads into the top cover of the carb. Only use this adjustment if you still can't remove all of the freeplay in the cable. Reinstall the gas tank and seat. Now trim the fuel line so that there's a little bit of slack when you connect it to the gas tank, but not so much that your boot or any other object could catch it and rip it off. You do not need any clamps for this fuel line. Last thing is to check and make sure that the throttle cable doesn't hang up anywhere. Turn the bars all the way to the left and all the way to the right, give it a little tug, and make sure it doesn't catch anywhere. All you gotta do now is fill the bowl and ride. Do me a huge favor and like this video, comment, share with your friends, and of course subscribe. Also, convince your buddies to buy a carb through my website. It really helps support this channel and making all this content. I hope you enjoyed it.